My name is Nia, and I live with my husband, Jack, and our daughter, Sarah. Together, we make a family of 3. Sarah is Jack's daughter from a previous relationship, which makes me her stepmother. Jack and I got married 5 years ago when Sarah was just 5 years old. In my 20s, I was diagnosed with a condition that made it impossible for me to have children. Until then, I had always dreamed of getting married and raising a family, but those dreams were crushed when my then-boyfriend's mother bluntly told me I should give up on marriage because of my condition. Influenced by her, my boyfriend ended our relationship. Their rejection left me feeling hopeless, and my desire for marriage faded completely. That's when I met Jack and Sarah. Sarah, who was 4 years old at the time, had gotten lost and was crying. I found her and helped her get to the police station, a scene that felt like something out of a drama. It was through this chance encounter that Jack and I met. Our relationship naturally blossomed into love, and eventually, we married and became a family. To my surprise, Sarah started calling me mom early on. Becoming a family happened more seamlessly than I could have imagined. I still vividly recall the warmth I felt when I held Sarah's hand that day at the police station. Jack has remained as kind and supportive as ever, and they both rescued me from my loneliness. I truly feel like Sarah is my own child, and it fills me with joy to watch her grow. However, Jack's mother was not as accepting. When I first met her, I could feel her scrutinizing me. Her sharp words still echo in my mind. To think someone would marry a woman with a child. Is she after my son's money? I had braced myself for some tension, but her blatant hostility caught me off guard. Jack, however, was furious. He grabbed my hand, ignored her protests, and quickly drove me away. I'm sorry, she's insane. You don't have to deal with her, he said, anger simmering in his voice. After that encounter, Jack shielded me from his mother, and we had no contact with her for years. Things changed 2 years ago when Jack's father fell ill and was hospitalized. We began seeing Jack's mother more often, and she seemed calmer, worn out even. I hoped our relationship might improve, but at Jack's father's funeral, her malice resurfaced. As relatives mourned, she smugly remarked, "Now I can live with my son. After this, I'll kick out that wife and find him someone who can give me a grandson. I don't need anything else as long as I have my son." Her cruel words silenced the room, and Jack, seething with anger, dragged her out. At the entrance, he confronted her. "If I'm here, you don't need anything else? Fine, I don't need you. Stay away from me and Nia or face the consequences." His voice was low but firm, and the relatives watched in stunned silence. That day marked a turning point. Jack's mother begged for forgiveness afterward, but Jack never wavered in his decision to cut ties with her. Despite these challenges, life moved forward. Sarah is now 10, busy with school and extracurricular activities. Inspired by her growth, I passed the employee exam at my part-time job and transitioned to full-time work. But just when our lives felt stable, a new disruption appeared. Daisy, a childhood friend of Jack's, recently divorced. Daisy moved back near Jack's mother's house and reached out to him. Jack was skeptical and visibly uncomfortable. "Daisy's known for her strong sense of justice," he explained, "but it's more about imposing her values on others than doing what's right." Jack told me stories of how Daisy's misguided interference had caused trouble in the past. She once revealed the location of a classmate who had escaped an abusive home, insisting they reconcile with their parents. Another time, she meddled in a friend's marriage, trying to reconcile them with an abusive partner, which led to chaos. Jack himself had been a target of her interference when she tried to mend his friendship with someone who had betrayed him, despite his clear desire to distance himself. Daisy's inability to see the harm in her actions was what made her truly unsettling. To her, family and relationships were sacred bonds that should never be severed. No matter the circumstances, she believed she was always doing the right thing, even as she left a trail of broken trust behind her. If I were to describe Daisy with a word, it might be idealistic, but there's nothing cute about her ideals. Honestly, she's the kind of person I'd rather avoid entirely. She likely twisted the truth to suit her narrative when speaking to my mother-in-law, who hasn't been in contact with relatives since the funeral. I'm sure Daisy has become her sounding board, listening to grievances and spreading tales of how I've supposedly wronged her. Daisy's sudden desire to see Jack was undoubtedly part of an attempt to reconcile him with his mother. Just hearing about it was exhausting. Daisy's boundless energy and misplaced meddling made me uneasy, and unfortunately, my fears were well-founded. One day, Daisy showed up unannounced at our house, declaring, "Your mom has collapsed. Come right now." Before Jack could fully process her words, she dragged him out the door. Left behind, my daughter and I were bewildered. As I began to calm down, Irritation bubbled up inside me. Daisy had barged into our home without a proper greeting, avoiding even a glance in my direction. Still, concerned that something serious might have happened to my mother-in-law, I waited anxiously for Jack's call. 2 hours later, Jack returned, looking utterly drained. His expression was a mix of frustration and weariness. "What happened? Did Mom really collapse?" I asked, dreading the answer. Jack sighed heavily and shook his head. "No," he replied. "It was all a pretense." He recounted how Daisy had lectured him on misunderstandings and reconciliation, while my mother-in-law played the role of a weak, weeping victim, pretending to be deeply concerned about him and Sarah. She was pretending to be frail, crying about how much she misses Sarah and me, Jack said bitterly, but in reality, she just wanted to guilt-trip me. Daisy even brought up the idea of breaking up our family. He hesitated, his gaze dropping. "She said you and Sarah were obstacles to Mom's happiness and that I should remarry, with Daisy." I froze. "Let me guess," I said slowly. "She thinks you two could raise Sarah together and give her the grandson she's always wanted?" Jack's silence confirmed my worst fears. I clenched my fists. "Does Daisy even have children?" "She had a child," Jack answered, his tone grim, "but her ex-husband got custody. Mom and Daisy think we should all live together and play happy family." The thought of those two plotting against our family made my stomach churn. "She knows our address now," I said, trying to stay calm. "Should we move?" Jack's expression softened as he saw the concern in my eyes. "I know how hard you've worked to become a full-time employee, but nothing is more important than keeping our family safe. Even if moving means extra challenges, I'll do whatever it takes to protect you and Sarah." "I'll follow you anywhere," I whispered, squeezing his hand tightly. "We'll get through this together." A few days later, trouble struck at work, keeping me late into the evening. I texted Jack to let him know, but he was also tied up at work. Our daughter assured me she was fine, saying she would lock the door and go to bed. Still, I couldn't shake my worry as the hours dragged on. By the time the issue was resolved, it was well past 11 p.m. Rushing home, I found the front door slightly ajar. My heart dropped. Did Jack come home early? Did Sarah forget to lock it? Cautiously, I stepped inside, only to feel someone grab my arm and pull me into the closet near the entrance. Panic surged through me until I turned and saw Sarah, her small hand covering my mouth. "Shoo," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't make a sound." Confused, I nodded. Sarah slowly opened the closet door a crack, pointing toward the living room. There, my mother-in-law and Daisy were sitting, deep in conversation. My pulse quickened. "How did they get in? How long have they been here?" "Huddled in the closet," Sarah whispered. "I heard their voices and knew it wasn't you or Dad." I was scared, so I hid. My heart ached as I held her clammy hand, her fear palpable, peeking out. I strained to hear their conversation. "They're probably out with that awful woman," my mother-in-law said with a sneer, dragging the poor child along to make a scene. "It's disgusting," Daisy replied, "but this might actually work in our favor. If we can prove she's neglecting her duties, you can push her out. Once she's gone, Jack can remarry, preferably someone like me, and finally give you a grandson." "Exactly," my mother-in-law crowed. "That woman is useless. She can take the girl and leave. Once she's gone, I'll cherish you as my real daughter-in-law." I felt a surge of anger, my mind racing with ways to confront them, but Sarah's trembling form kept me rooted in place. I couldn't risk leaving her alone, not with those two in the house. My phone vibrated silently in my pocket, a message from Jack saying he was downstairs. I quickly texted back, "Come quietly to the first room. Don't make any noise." "What's wrong?" he replied. My hand shook as I typed, "They're here." I quickly texted Jack, "Come home immediately." Within minutes, he arrived, his face peeking cautiously through the slightly open door. My daughter Sarah, still trembling, started to cry softly at the sight of him. Without a word, I placed a finger over my lips, signaling her to stay quiet, and gestured toward the living room where the intruders were. From the shadows, we could hear my mother-in-law and Daisy chatting, their laughter sharp and grating. "They haven't come back yet," Daisy remarked. "Maybe next time it'll be more impactful to show up at night." "Indeed," my mother-in-law agreed, her tone smug, "but no matter, we'll find a way to make them leave. Once Jack sees the evidence, he'll lose interest in that woman, then you can comfort him, and love will blossom." She waved her hand dramatically. "These reproductions are so well done now, practically indistinguishable from the real thing. I'm so excited for the three of us to live together, me, you, and my son. This time, it's our turn." Daisy giggled. "What if she's actually cheating? That would make this even easier." Their laughter made my blood boil. and before I could act, a loud crash echoed from the entrance, a vase had toppled to the floor. "What was that?" Daisy exclaimed. "I'll check." But before she could move, the light suddenly went out, plunging the house into darkness. "What's going on?" my mother-in-law whispered in panic. In the pitch black, Jack stormed into the room, his voice booming. "What are you doing here?" The two women shrieked in fright, their bravado evaporating. Then, a small voice, Sarah's, called out softly, "Mom?" The sound sent them into further hysteria, convinced now they were being haunted. As thunder cracked outside, illuminating the room for a split second, I saw Sarah's anxious face. Anger surged through me, and I could no longer contain myself. Standing, I slowly slid open the door to the living room. The two intruders, disoriented and terrified, didn't notice me at first. When I stepped closer, I said coldly, "You've gone too far. You've hurt my family, frightened my daughter, and invaded our home. I will never forgive you." As I spoke, I shone a flashlight under my chin, casting eerie shadows across my face. A well-timed lightning strike lit the room once more, and both women screamed, collapsing onto the floor. "Nia, please forgive us," my mother-in-law wailed. "You think this is a game?" I snapped, my voice shaking with fury. "Get out, now." Still crying, the two scrambled out of the house, tripping over themselves in their haste. Jack flipped the light switch, and the room brightened again. "They've left," he confirmed. I turned off the flashlight, exhaustion washing over me. Jack gave a faint smile. "They probably thought you were a ghost or something." "Maybe," I replied dryly, though I doubt that will stop them for long. Sarah clung to me, her voice small. "Mom, I was so scared." I hugged her tightly. "I'm so sorry, sweetie, it's over now." Jack knelt beside us, his eyes glistening. "I'm so sorry for what they've done to you both." Later, we pieced together their twisted scheme. Daisy and my mother-in-law had fabricated evidence, fake photos, and forged investigation reports, claiming I was unfaithful. They planned to present it to Jack, hoping to manipulate him into divorcing me so Daisy could take my place. Daisy's desperation stemmed from her own failures. Divorced after an affair, she'd lost custody of her child and alienated everyone around her. She'd hoped to use Jack as a lifeline, dragging him into her mess, but her manipulations only solidified our resolve. The aftermath of that night brought its own strange consequences. My mother-in-law, convinced I was the ghost of Jack's first wife, avoided us entirely. Neighbors reported her hanging talismans and chanting sutras to ward off evil. Much to their annoyance, we decided it was time to move, leaving their chaos behind for good. The day before the move, Daisy made one final attempt. She banged on our door, her hair disheveled, screaming, "You've ruined my life. I can't even see my son anymore. Why do you get to be so comfortable as a stepmother?" I blocked her path, calm but firm. "If families can work things out through discussion, as you claim, why haven't you resolved things with your ex-husband and his family? If even your own child doesn't want to see you, perhaps it's time to reflect on your actions." Daisy's face reddened. "You've taken everything from me. I loved Jack." Jack appeared behind me, his expression cold. "Enough, Daisy, this has to stop. You don't love me, you just want someone to clean up your mess. I'm calling the police if you don't leave." Her voice cracked with desperation. "But I'm a good person. You're being deceived by her." Jack's laugh was dry. "Good people don't need to declare it. Others can see it for themselves." Faced with his rejection, Daisy fled in tears. As I held Sarah close, she looked up at me with wide eyes. "Mom, I think of you as my real mom. Do you think of me as your real daughter?" Tears welled up in my eyes. "Of course I do, sweetheart. I'll always protect you." The next day, we moved to our new home, a fresh start for our family, free from the shadows of manipulation and deceit. Together, we vowed to guard the happiness we had fought so hard to preserve.